I was just sharing that I think my father is coming.
Yeah, but I can only stay for half an hour, I'm afraid. I've got to go to something else. Anyway, hi, Stephen.
Hello, Robert. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Got a few people coming in. Oh, here's John. Beautiful. Do you remember John from the quantum physics one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cynthia. She's here. Hi, John. Great to see you. So wonderful. We have Margaret with her video off, and we will just see who is going to join us on this. There she is. Oh, Amber Smith.
Hello, Margaret.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to get rolling because we have an hour here. Hi, Amber. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. And I just wanted to, I don't know how many people are coming from the US. We weren't quite sure putting it on this Friday, November 24th, but Steve and I were just talking about the feeling of thanks and feeling very grateful for community, for friendships, for collaboration. For me, it's the perfect day for this kind of conversation. And I'm thrilled to see familiar faces and some new ones popping up here. Thank you for taking the time out to be with us today. I wonder, as we're letting people in, if you could just add your name and where you are in the world in the chat. And even if you can share what you're really interested about learning more about Steve, neuroscience, learning, pop it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And I will just welcome you all to the Hope Braintrust. This is a collaborative space online and in person. Yes, sometimes we do in-person events designed for and by this growing community of educators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. My mission is to mobilize authentic connections between all stakeholders in education: students, teachers, parents, the builders, the academics, and everyone in between. This is a space where you're going to meet courageous and willing people you may never otherwise have met. My name is Hope Patterson. I'm a mother of two, a transformation coach, and global education innovation specialist. I'm on a mission, as Steve will attest, as some of you will attest, to shine a spotlight on people working to support and innovate education and an entrepreneurial mindset for our future generations. If you're not part of our Hope Braintrust membership and want to participate in weekly, monthly events and sync-ups like today, please hop into the link below in the chat. I'm just going to pop it in right now as people are popping in right here. And I'm seeing people, thank you for sharing where you're coming from. John Rainford, I think you are on the border of Wales in the UK. We've got Quebec. We have a new message right down here, Toronto. Hi, JJ. Good to see you. So we are here to network, collaborate, share, learn, and grow in a supportive way. And I offer my coaching expertise, my global network, and my love-based approach to supporting you in new, remarkable directions. I believe together we can move mountains. So before we begin, I'm just going to give you the lay of the land in this Thanksgiving-esque special. Steve Schecter and I were talking about doing a collaboration, me shining a spotlight on his work with his son, Tom, and team. And I was originally just going to interview him, two of us, and I thought, why don't we just open it up, get other people to join in and share their questions and their insights as we explore his work in MuchSmarter. So the first half an hour or so, I'm going to be asking some questions, kind of like a roundtable interview. I'll leave space for some of you if you feel called to ask questions. I'll keep my eyes peeled for hands raised, and I invite you to ask away like we're at a round table. I wish that I had yummy things for us to eat, but we can just imagine. And for the last bit, if we have time, we will also hear from a few of you and learn what you're working on, because again, passing that spotlight around and showcasing some of the beautiful work that you are contributing to. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Steve. I'm going to bring him up here so you can see his face. He's a friend, a collaborator, and Steve Schecter and his son Tom and team run MuchSmarter. We're going to learn about that today. And I would say that Steve is an ageless human. There's a twinkle that radiates from him and creates a trusted space for all who come across his path. He's a father, he's a musician, a podcaster, a researcher, a mentor and tutor, and a passionate learner in all that he does. As the co-founder and CEO of MuchSmarter, a company that teaches young people how to use their minds to create the lives they want, MuchSmarter provides online learning games in the US and UK to teach students successful habits of thinking, feeling, and learning. The games incorporate the experience Steve and his team have acquired from coaching hundreds of students since 2004. MuchSmarter students learn to approach all learning challenges with confidence, poise, and skill. So, as many of you know, much of my work is spent coaching grown-ups on their mindsets, how they can build capacity, how they can learn how to learn at any age, and transform their professional and personal lives to be in alignment of their vision. AKA, I help grown-ups build the life they want. And one of the reasons that I really am interested in Steve's work in education is that he's helping to build these muscles for young people. And I think most of you can agree, we all like origin stories. So I thought we would start out with a prompt. Steve, tell us, maybe we can get this whole ball started. Tell us the conversation you had with your wife as you walked along the beach when you were first dating. Where did this seed of an idea that animated this business you now run, MuchSmarter, and how you weave neuroscience, psychology, and mindset to help young people today? Over to you.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Hope. I think you tell my story beautifully already. Thank you. The story begins like you. I have the great privilege of teaching young people stuff that I needed to learn myself. I think that's really the ultimate origin of MuchSmarter, is that I found myself as a young person not having all the tools and skills that I wanted. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I said to him that a couple of friends and I agreed we lacked confidence. And my father made a prediction. He said, you know, some of them may still lack confidence, but you're going to figure out how to build confidence. And that was the earliest it was really, I began as a learner, and I found that by learning certain skills, I was able to level up my performance in the areas that mattered. So that was kind of the earliest start of MuchSmarter. Later, as a parent, I asked myself the question, what is it I most desire my children to learn? And I even asked myself the question, what would I do if an educational system were mine to lead, mine to superintend? What would it look like? And I asked myself those questions and put the answers on the shelf for a moment. I had some theories. And then later, as fate would have it, my accidental tutoring company was born in 2004. I was a product developer and product manager by training, and I've been doing that very successfully for 20 years. But as it happens, I was passionately volunteering with young people in New York City. And one day, a man who runs a private school said to me, "Steve, I really wish you were available to help our kids with physics and chemistry." And I didn't think he was serious, so I said, "Sure, no problem." And some months later, he started sending me students, a trickle at first and later a flood. And that's how, as I put it, my accidental tutoring company was born. And this brings us to around the time to that fateful conversation on the beach. I had a starting hypothesis for MuchSmarter. It was that who we become is a product of how we think, how we feel, and how we learn. And I had read entrepreneurial people like Napoleon Hill, who talked about the process of manifesting a vision. So I started out with this statement that I wanted to build the company around teaching people how to use how they think, how they feel, and how they learn. And I shared this conversation with my now wife on the beach, and she said, "You know, I kind of like it, but I really don't see how you build a company around that." And she was just really trying to be supportive, but as she said, I didn't get it. And so in the ensuing years, this initial fuzzy thing has taken really beautiful shape to the point where I don't think there's anyone more enthusiastic today than Diane about what we're doing. But it starts with a premise: how we think, how we feel, and how we learn. And in the beginning, I was reading Carol Dweck, the growth mindset. I was reading a bunch of papers about neuroscience, and I read Joe Dispenza's book called Evolve Your Brain. And I said, okay, this is a beautiful thing to build on. I loved growth mindset, but I wasn't satisfied with it because I felt that mindset is a way of a set of a moment in time. So what I resolved to do at a certain point in time was to say, help young people develop, I want to say, successful habits of thinking, feeling, and learning. And that kind of brings us to the present day.
I love that. I mean, as you know, I am always trying to weave innovation, learning, entrepreneurship. Sounds like you were nurturing an idea baby and your wife had questions. I wonder if this is bringing up any questions from any of you here, if you feel called to put your hand up and introduce yourself. Breeza did share that she wants love stories at the beginning of each Hope Braintrust. It's a good way to settle into a Friday. I'm wondering if anybody else had any questions for Steve in his initial inception. Cynthia, go ahead.
Well, stop me. Thank you, Hope. And Steve, stop me if you think this is something you're going to get to as you speak. But I'm wondering about growth mindset with different demographics of students. I have a former colleague who's her academic work is somewhat in that area, and she said there were conversations. This was about 2 years ago. Conversations happening about the idea that some students, maybe those who come from higher socioeconomic backgrounds, who already have a lot of opportunities open to them, there was concern that some students, if they don't fully understand it, they might keep aiming for perfection, thinking I should be able to just everything should be possible, just because they've had those opportunities, that they might not process it adequately. So I didn't know if you had some thoughts about that, about the language around how we talk about it with students, how it might be different, understanding the students and what they bring into that, the mindset question.
I think that's a wonderful question. And I want to say that we addressed it in the beginning very easily because it was an individual practice. We work with people one-on-one. And so what I learned to do, in the beginning, I was learning as I went, but what I learned to do was to meet students where they were. So the immediate distinguishing thing is, what life experiences are we working with here? What metaphors can we use? One student that we got early on was someone who had been ill the first 2 years of her life. And so her brain she had delayed development and all manner of difficulty. And honest to goodness, initially when we worked with her on stuff, we'd have to deal with a very limited world. We'd have to talk about her house and her dog and whatever she was able to relate to. It was an amazing story, when her father told me she was on the honor roll one year. He had tears streaming down his face. But the short answer to your question is, this was an individualized practice. So yeah, it was wherever the student is, that's where we meet them.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Robert.
Steve, hi.
Hi, Robert.
I'm involved with rowing, and one of the things that we've noticed with young people, because rowing is actually so difficult, it naturally builds self-confidence in that you can, as a kid, you can sign up for soccer and you can just get on the pitch and there's nothing, you don't have to be particularly talented, you're there, right? But with rowing, just even getting in the boat is a big task to learn. And whilst you have coaches, kids who learn how to row, it's all done by themselves. The coach isn't in the boat with them. And so by the end of a week's rowing, the kids are rowing really well. And what they've discovered is that they've done it all themselves. And this builds true confidence. And I put that on one side because I hear a lot of parents who are absolutely convinced that if they tell their children that they're wonderful all the time, no matter what they do, this builds self-confidence. And I think there's an enormous chasm between the two processes here. And so as your practice is involved with building self-confidence, at least that's what I've heard you say, what is the pathway that you normally take here?
Well, I don't get everybody in a boat, but Robert, I think you're hitting on a critical point, and that this isn't really about feeling good in that sense. As a matter of fact, it's really about how we learn to respond to challenge and how we handle challenge. And candidly, it's really the presence of challenge and meeting challenge. We're a little bit contrarian. I don't want to sound mean and heartless, but we don't really have an objection per se to tests or to difficult courses or to things like that. I do object to someone wrapping up their self-esteem in something like that, but I think that we actually build our confidence, our strengths against resistance. And so rowing is a great example. Other things that for our students, I love it when I find out a student of mine is in a martial arts course, or if a student of mine is passionately involved in a sport like basketball or anything that involves challenge, because that gives them metaphors that they can already rely on for meeting whatever this new challenge is, whether it's a standardized test or an organic chemistry course or something else that frightens them. The way self-confidence is built is not running away from a challenge, but learning to address it, and even sometimes just giving it a good shot. Better to give it a good shot and not win than not giving it a good shot.
I love that. I can't tell you how often I am working with grown-ups around their failure tolerance, because when we're younger, so many of us don't build that muscle. And I'd really like to hear, Steve, how you are, help us all on this call, and those who are watching asynchronously, help us understand how MuchSmarter works in the world. What is the structure? You've told us about your idea and what you're weaving in, but explain to us, how does it work? Yeah, tell us.
So it's a two-part answer, because I'd like to share how we do that today, and then I want to share what we're transitioning to and what it will look like in the near future. So what we do today, we'll come back to this idea of habits of thinking, feeling, and learning. And I'm going to give you the 5-second version, the elevator pitch version of habits of thinking, feeling, and learning. As a practical matter, we've evolved 10 habits of thinking, 10 habits of feeling, and 10 habits of learning that we weave into our private practice. But suffice it to say for the moment that the purpose of the habits of thinking is to help a person expand their view of their potential and to shrink what they see as difficulty. It's if you look at where most people are, and I don't mean this in a dismissive way, it's really about how we've learned. A typical student undervalues their potential and sees challenges like, here's their potential and here's challenge. You can hear the language. Chemistry is so hard. I do get a lot of rowers, Robert, and they don't, they're already in it, they're not complaining, but it's that idea. Habits of thinking is expand potential, shrink difficulty. Habits of feeling, in a nutshell, is teaching students how to choose the emotion that they bring into a challenging situation. Most of us, before we learn otherwise, most of us are at the mercy of how we feel on a given day. So we don't feel our best, and we have a challenging situation, and we carry around a lot of worry, a lot of anger, a lot of regret. And so the ability to choose the emotion that we bring to a game is a superpower. And then the habits of learning boil down to, we teach students how to frame learning challenges as games of skill. So can I share with you the story of how I learned that? I had a student named Jonah one year. This was very early in the practice, and Jonah's mom told me that Jonah was an almost obsessively passionate basketball player and tennis player. She said Jonah practices from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., whatever he does. Jonah had real problems with math. I mean, phobia level problems with math. If you give him, I gave him 20 problems to look at, he was able to get 1 out of the 20. And if I gave him a 5-step problem, he would forget what he was working on after step 1. So I said to Jonah, what would happen? What do you think would happen if you practiced math the same way you practice tennis or basketball? And he said to me without any hesitation, Steve, I would be a math monster. And that came close to being true. In the time I knew him, he did not quite become a math monster, but for all intents and purposes, he conquered that demon. So the idea of there are certain patterns to learning any game, and so we will frame virtually any academic challenge as a game of skill, which has a certain objective, it has a certain language you use, it has a certain set of parameters, and is also has a model of what excellent performance looks like. So if you want to model great tennis, you go to Serena or Roger or Rafael. If you want to model great performance in any game, there's usually someone you can look at to emulate a bit to get you started. But those are the 3 things. Did I give you a sense of how we do it in our current environment?
Yes, you definitely did. And I'm curious to hear John Rainford's reflections on this. John, we were lucky enough to have John deliver a talk on quantum physics and self-esteem. And I know you, John, have worked with your own children and tutoring other people and tutoring even in mentoring in a corporate environment around, like, is anything that Steve is saying, is it activating or bringing things to mind that have really landed for you in your work as well?
Well, I certainly empathise with what Stephen is saying. I've had sort of a personal experience with my own children who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, for example. And I was teaching them leadership, and I went into fostering, and we taught foster kids leadership and so on. And like Stephen was saying, the experiences, the challenges in life should be seen as something that you need to overcome in terms of fear. And I think the fear is a bad motivator in some respects. And I think we need to understand that they're all meant to be challenges, and that they're all, if you like, barriers to self-growth. And I think that's what we all need to embrace, is that sometimes adversity, or we think is adversity, is an opportunity for growth on a personal level. And I'm really moved, I think, by the amount of people who understand that around the world, which is fantastic. And meeting leaders who understand that children have to be nourished and encouraged to be the best they can be, but at the same time they need to understand what resilience is, which is what I think Stephen was alluding to. We need to understand that these are challenges that we need to understand. And so I've developed a process. Well, actually, I just discovered it, really. I didn't develop it. Well, I didn't invent it. I thought we thought of it at the time, but it was already out there. It's probably even ancient wisdom, which is looking at relationships and how you build relationships, and trying to understand how you can develop relationships that actually are meaningful, and not necessarily seeing things in a bad light, but actually trying to understand why it appears that it's a bad light. So a lot of my journey is about helping other people and myself, because I'm still learning to understand the world that we're in. And I would really love the children in the world to understand that, instead of treating them as little people who've got no sense, if you like, getting them to understand that it's all about relationships and building relationships, and understanding about themselves and the world that they live in. And I'm passionate about that journey, and I've met some fantastic people on my journey that actually all like thinking in that way, like yourselves, like this group here. I know we all care about personal development, and especially children's development. And we have all responsibility, every one of us here, in that sense, because it isn't just down to teachers, government, or anybody else. It's down to us. And we've all got to take responsibility to do what we can, and help people understand the learning. Sorry if it sounds like a bit of a speech.
No, I do love your shares, John, and it brings up for me all that we're doing here on a Friday, 24th of November, is we're coming together and we're building these connections with each other, and we're learning about Steve's work, but also connecting the dots for the work that I'm looking at each of your faces in the little Zoom boxes, and I know that you're all doing your best to connect with young people. Maybe you're working with adults as well to try and seed their mindset, their confidence. And really, through this interview with Steve, I'm hoping to spark more connections on how important this work is, whether you're working with young humans or older humans. And Steve, so I wonder if we could take this to you sharing, you and your team. What are you reaching out and working with adults? Are you working with researchers? Like, how can all of these amazing participants today, how could they potentially connect with you or share your work, or how can they connect the dots to what you're doing and what they're doing?
That's a great question, Hope. Thank you. May I address it by painting a picture of what we're what we're creating, and then
Yeah.
in order to do that, then people can see what the edifice is, and then see where a brick or a beam or a piece of that would fit. So if you take the narrative back to helping young people develop effective habits of thinking, feeling, and learning, and I've actually started to use the words successful habits of thinking, feeling, and learning, because I do not want to be shy about using the word success, especially deeply understanding that success means different things for different people. So I don't mean to be oppressive in any way by using the word success. I think success is being able to live a created life, which is almost self-definitional. But let me get to this picture. We are, about 5 years ago, my son and several of his friends from college who had formed a tech team approached me and said, "We love your philosophy. Can we build games around it? That games that will do the work for you?" And that was really being both a product developer and a composer. I thought, what a lovely thing to create, is to encapsulate our tutoring philosophy into something that tangible that could then be used to reach many more students. So that's what we do. We have learning games. We've got 4 of them in place so far. We're testing we use the games with our private students. It has accelerated our work wonderfully. The games are being tested in school systems in the United Kingdom as we speak. We have a collaborative research relationship with a psychologist named Alice Jones Bartoli at the University of London. Our intent, we have a research agenda to do a long-term look at the habits of thinking, feeling, and learning that we've hypothesized as being differential to student success. And we want to test that relationship over time so that we weed them and have a richer understanding of how to empower students. And then ultimately, if you could envision with me 3 pieces here. The part that we uniquely want to spearhead is this K-12 curriculum based on our games. In other words, we would like to be able to teach every academic discipline in the context of a game of skill. We would like that to be part of I want to call it an academy, that we don't feel that the games alone comprise an education. We think that the games combined with project-based learning would, I think, create an education system that I would really love to put my signature on. So we're looking ultimately to have a K-12 curriculum of the games. We are looking to have a network of like-minded educators to author some games and use them with their students, and then ultimately to partner with those who with us have the wherewithal to reach a substantial number of students and parents. We're not looking necessarily to be the answer for everyone. We feel that particularly with the growth of AI, we feel that many students and parents will opt to have the machine do much of the work for them, and we think some of them will not benefit as much as they might from having a bit of challenge. So we would like to reach a substantial population of students and parents who will get their K-12 education built in part around our games.
Which brings up the question JJ just asked. And JJ works in Toronto. I'll let her share a little bit about captains and poets around social emotional learning in a minute. But she asked the question on many of our minds. I know it's on mine. Can you give us an example of a game? Like Tom and his team are creating these games. Could you walk us through what one of these games would look like or how it would be experienced?
Yeah, we started with our games with the problems. Now, bear in mind, we're a private coaching practice, and we started with the complaints and problems and phobias that most parents present to us. So we started with 3 different standardized test games that have been achieving yeoman results, and again, helping students reframe these as games of skill has been a wonderful experience. I plan to follow up this year with 4 math games. We'll have a reading game, we'll have a writing game, and that to me is kind of a start. From there, I think we're going to let the educators drive the ultimate shape of our curriculum with uniquely inspired games. So, if we think about something that people normally find difficult or maybe don't find enjoyable or fun, we found that reframing these things as games of skill has been a huge change maker.
Perfect. I want to open up the floor because you just laid down a whole bunch of amazing ideas you're incubating, directions for your work, possible collaborations, and just looking at the names, I know we have coaches, we have educators, we have founders of companies. Does anybody have questions or ideas or inquiry that you'd like to ask Steve about MuchSmarter? Go ahead, Cynthia.
Thanks. Sorry, I was like, where's my raise hand button? Steve, thank you for this. I wanted to ask about actually a person, not myself, but a friend of mine who came to mind as you were talking. And I wanted to make a note to possibly follow up with her to tell her about you. And she does a lot of she teaches college students in Guatemala. But what would be something that you would suggest I share with her if I wanted to say, hey, I heard this man speak, this is what he's working on. If you take a look, maybe this is something for a connection to pursue. What should I share with her?
MuchSmarter.com.
Just go right to the site. Okay.
Pretty well summarized on MuchSmarter.com.
Okay, thanks.
She can even try a game.
She would love it.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Anybody else? Does anybody else have? JJ, do you want to just share a little bit about Captains and Poets too while we're all here?
Sure. Hopefully I don't forget my question. Okay. Write it down. Okay, I'm gonna write it down. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I am one of the co-founders of Captains and Poets. As Hope mentioned, we're in Toronto based here, but we're actually in 7 countries. So that's a super exciting part of our journey. And we sort of fall in that intersection of well-being and identity, which I think have often been treated separately, but people are realizing, the well-being, the belonging piece go hand in hand. And the basic idea is we all have a captain inside. It's our doer, takes us out into the world, makes decisions, takes charge, perseveres with that grit that Carol Dweck talks about. But the poet is really the one that inspires. The poet is your emotions, your imagination, your intuition, your creativity, your dreams. And when they work together, that's how you're best self. So we're, like everybody here, really working to empower kids in these really overwhelming times, just to know who they are and to be authentic in the world and to build on their strengths. So Steve, really great hearing what you have to say today. And I'm curious, because I'm always thinking, like, how do we scale this stuff? How do we have greater impact? Are you going to be training teachers on, like, sort of go into, for example, teachers who teach English and have like the reading game? And are you going to then sort of give them an example or two and then teach them how to gamify their curriculum? Or are you planning on building out the content yourself?
That's a great question. What we would propose to teach teachers primarily is the stuff that they're not already well versed in. In other words, I don't propose to teach a a very competent English teacher English. So what I would say is the neuroscience part is the part that will build into the teacher training, and then teachers can then offer. We're going to invite teachers to author games. So in other words, we've started the ball rolling. We have an engine that is if you will, an engine for future games. So that given some imagination and domain expertise, we could have somebody who knows organic chemistry develop an organic chemistry game with us based on their knowledge of chemistry and our format and approach.
Okay, so you're providing sort of the technology and they're like plugging it in the content. Is that the idea?
Technology and in the early going, a bit of oversight. My son is a chief product officer of our company, but like with most things, I anticipate that as the years go by, the process of developing a game will be easier and easier as our technology advances.
Okay, and what is the website one more time? Maybe we could put it.
MuchSmarter.com.
I'm going to put it.
MuchSmarter.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, JJ.
I wonder if Claire, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about School of Humanity too, because part of what I'm hearing, Steve, my coach, my entrepreneur hat is coming on and thinking about you prototyping your game creation with some beta schools or some networks and aligning your research arm that you're already developing. And I'm just thinking about potential settings. And while we have Claire on the call, I thought maybe it would be great for Claire to share a little bit about School of Humanity, and if having games around neuroscience and mindset, thinking, feeling, and learning, if that appeals to you or what it brings up for you.
Hi, thanks, Hope. Yes, Steve and I have met up actually outside of the Hope events, following one of the previous events where we connected. So that was interesting to learn more about what he's doing and see if there are potential collaborations there. But just for those who are not familiar with School of Humanity, we're an online high school reinventing education. So our learners basically tackle a challenge each term, as opposed to learning subjects individually as kind of siloed subjects. They tackle a challenge through an interdisciplinary lens and just basically work through it each term. We also have a strong focus on human flourishing, which is helping them to develop as individuals, to their sort of socio-emotional aspect, and learn about who they are and what their purpose is in life, really, to help them develop and become or just develop a meaningful life, essentially. Yeah, that's the main thing. So our curriculum is fully developed by our team of learning designers. So we have a system whereby we actually have learning architects and learning designers who design everything from the challenges to the skill units which accompany the learning journey and the whole credit system. And then we have learning facilitators who actually impart it. So it's kind of split that way. So the learning facilitators can really focus on the learners and help them, and spend a lot of personalized time with each learner and helping them to really develop their projects and their learning. Yeah, so I'm sure there are potentials. We did discuss previously with Stephen. It's something that we would need to explore in more depth, but there's always room for trialing projects and seeing how it could work.
Thank you. Sorry, did I cut you off, Claire? Go ahead. Did you have anything more?
No, I was just going to respond to Brisa, who asked if the facilitators need to be subject specific. They are more generalists, but we do have a learning facilitator who is more focused in the humanities field, and we have another learning facilitator who is kind of focused on STEM related topics, whereas the challenges are always interdisciplinary. We do tend to have challenges with a focus on a particular area, and each term we offer one of each, and the learners can choose which they want to do, and then that will determine which learning facilitator they work with that term.
I do love the individualized pathways and mentorship that's emerging more and more in our education landscape. I know I have trialed it with my own children. I wonder, Julian, you're here and not necessarily an educator of children, but you are definitely a coach for transformation and supporting entrepreneurs and mindsets. I'm wondering what this is bringing up for you, if you have any insights or thoughts for Steve.
I mean, thank you, Hope. Yeah, I mean, I do. I actually really aspire, and we've talked a little bit about it, to eventually start working with younger people, because I think adults, it's kind of hopeless. I'm joking, of course, because it is trickier, and I'm interested. There was two things that came up. I was a bit curious around two different things. You could take either one, Steve, because I was curious about, like, if these are purely cognitive or mental games, how there's any embodiment parts coming into this. So that's one question. And the second was more around the difference it must be in learning in the earlier stages of, K1, 2 versus, I'm more interested ultimately in the teens. So, because I guess that you're getting into the possibility of the need for some more, what I would call rewiring, which is what we do. It's even more important later in life. But anyway, so either of those two questions about whether or not you're able to build in, because games are great, especially when we're playing in person, and this all seems to be online. So I'm just wondering about how you've been able to, or play with the idea of there being more full person engagement and not just mental or cognitive.
Well, I think that the question becomes more stark if you get the student simply playing the games in the absence of any human interaction. I found the distinction between working with people in a physical space to working with people online to be non-existent. That in other words, if anything, in terms of our coaching, we were as probably everybody else was, we were forced out of physical meetings about 3 years ago, and if anything, our results have been better over the past 3 years. So it's not the online part isn't the issue, but when we are starting to reach thousands of students instead of hundreds of students, as we're reaching with one-on-one interaction or even group coaching, when it starts to get more extensive, we have to create opportunities for group involvement, for community, to make sure the human touch is always there.
And teens, I do appreciate that. It is anyone here. I feel, Breeza, you might work with younger children and teenagers. I wonder if you can speak to that. Yeah. Being able to get to children in certain stages of development, or perhaps John, you have something to say, or Amber. I know for myself, there was really a sweet spot when you have the captive engagement of young children, really young children who are quite flexible, under 7, and they're really forging their beliefs about the world and beliefs about what's possible. I feel like getting to the younger child is really important, but teenagers definitely need support. So there's no doubt about that. I wonder if anyone wants to speak to like an ideal timing, or maybe Steve, when this kind of work could be targeted for most impact.
I can share with you that we started with high schoolers really quite by accident. It just happened to be, remember, it was an accidental tutoring company, so we happened to get referrals from kids who were typically 16 and 17. We've been working backwards. The next generation, even the next generation of our games, our UK games, are for 11, 12-year-olds. And my sense is I've coached students as young as 8 on these habits of thinking, feeling, and learning, and they quite understand it at 8. And I think 7 or 8 is actually a good time. Of course, the language is different, the context is different, the metaphors are different, but I don't see why you wouldn't start teaching successful habits of thinking, feeling, and learning to a 7-year-old.
Definitely.
Put it out there anyway, see what others think.
And Amber, I completely agree with you. The CBT, EFT, NLP. If you want to, do you practice any of these in your work, Amber? Do you want to just share a little bit about yourself for all of us? We'd love to hear.
Yes, so I'm Amber Smith. I live in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and I recently started a 501c3 nonprofit called Evolving in Education. I'm an unlikely fit for this because my background's in underwater construction, underwater demolition, and underwater bridge inspection. And I'll answer that really quick. It's cognitive behavioral therapy is CBT, EFT is energy freedom training, and NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm actually a homeschool dropout as well. I got my GED and I took courses in psychology, welding, computer-aided drafting, a little bit of computer science and whatnot. And then I ran away with the circus for 7.5 years, came back home, got a pilot license, and started my my career in underwater construction. Then I had twins in 2019 and they're nearing school age, and everyone was asking me what to do about schooling for them. And the public schools around here are kind of terrible. And I learned of Montessori school and Forest school and Waldorf school, IB, Reggio Emilia, etc., all around the same time. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to combine the best practices from all these holistic forms of education from around the world and inform them with insights from developmental neuroscience, cognitive psychology, mindfulness, mental health, nutrition, fitness, etc. So that's where we're at now. We're a group of over 552 volunteers from around the globe with backgrounds ranging from neuroscience, psychology, public administrators, educators, parents, mindfulness experts, etc. And we're just working together we hope to start a pilot project here in the Shoals. We're going to implement into one kindergarten class and follow that class through 6th grade, measuring our impact and success through, learning analytics, brain function measurements, health and mental assessments, teacher and student surveys, etc. And it's quite the fun endeavor. I invite you all to join.
And
Amber,
I don't. So awesome. And like some people, I saw their faces lean in when you said I ran away with the circus. Everyone leaned in and you got everyone's attention. Amber, that is so cool. Do you have a website, something that we can connect with after?
I'll share it. Yes, I'll share it in the chat. And I've wrote down everyone's name that I could to find y'all on LinkedIn. But thank you for the opportunity to join. I really appreciate it. And we're looking into incorporating, gamification and kind of all the things, all the resources and knowledge from around the world that can help students thrive is our goal. We'll stop at nothing.
I can tell.
So I've shared.
You'll stop at
Thank
nothing.
you.
If I've learned anything, Amber, in the 1.5 years, I would just want to also give thanks. This is the 31st Hope Braintrust, an experiment that I started a while ago to bring people together from all over the world. And we never know who's going to show up on these events. Sometimes we have tons of people. Sometimes we have intimate events where we end up crying. You never know. But what I do know is these connections and collaborations have led to some beautiful partnerships over the last 18 months, and partnerships between entrepreneurs, innovators, and educators. So thank you, Amber. And perhaps you'll find a way to connect with Steve after this. I'm sure we will come hunt you down on LinkedIn. With just a few minutes left, I wanted to just open up the floor if anybody had anything they wanted to share about questions for Steve, something they're working on that they'd like to share with the group while we all are together in this connection hour. Margaret's in her car now. Go ahead, Claire. Oh, you're just
yes. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to put my hand down and I did the mute. I was wondering, Steve, the sort of games, are they to try and visualize like what a game looks like? Is it like a kind of computer game, or is it like can you describe a little bit like what the game would look like from a child's perspective? How do they get engaged with it?
Yeah, it is typically it is computer based. It is online, and it kind of introduces a student to the domain, whatever the domain is, whatever the challenge they're taking on. It gives them a framework for breaking down that challenge into baby steps that they can take a day at a time. It gives them a roadmap. It gives them a dashboard for being able to measure their own progress along the way. There's a module for connecting with a coach or facilitator. So a coach and facilitator can meet and talk about a particular challenge the student is having. And then there is a section of the game called My Game, where the student interacts with what we're calling the habits of thinking, feeling, and learning that will help them master their game. So so that's it. If you can just visualize a dashboard, you can visualize areas for instruction and areas for interaction and coaching, all online.
I think in the spirit of visualizing, Steve, you and I discussed doing a part 2 where we can at least have a little walkthrough of what this game would look like, to show people.
I think that would be great. We could we have a new game coming on board in January. Maybe we'll sometime in 2024 we'll do a walkthrough of one of our new games.
That would be great. Thank you. Anybody else? Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts you want to leave with? Anything exciting that you want to share or connect with people on?
I would like to say thank you, Hope. I think I think your intent of shining a spotlight was brilliant. I think that the story came out, but not just my story, the story interwoven with other stories. So I'm thankful in the spirit of Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for being here and thankful for all the incisive questions that have come along the way.
We appreciate
So I would like to say thank you as well, because this is a really interesting and compelling audience, and I think we can grow it. And I'm hoping to announce some good news quite soon, either with Microsoft or somebody or other, about improving learning globally. So there may be some things that I can announce perhaps next time we meet up. But yeah, I'm very happy in this, if I can say it that way, in this all, you know, the conversations we're having. And it's down to you, Hope. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, and I just want to nudge you all to find each other one-on-one. I can't tell you what I have discovered about the human spirit and learning and growth just by having one-on-one connections with people all over the world, even if it's 15 minutes. You never know what is going to spark in those conversations, and that's what this community is about. So I love the different generations, the different cultures, people coming together. You all have huge hearts, and I wish you well on this Friday. Breeza, go ahead. Are you still with us? Maybe she's not. She looks like she's frozen.
Did I freeze? I don't know if I'm frozen or not.
Okay, there you are.
Okay.
There you are. We got
Sorry.
you.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I want to say thank you to this group and for the inspiration, and it's always a pleasure to be here. One of the things I'm trying to figure out is I'm still transitioning out of being a school teacher into something that's like all of the different projects that I'm hearing about. So if anybody hears of something that's like, oh, we're looking for like an inspired, creative person, I'm happy to share more of my qualifications. I know we're finishing our time now. So one recent thing is I recently started like a small part-time job that I'm hoping will grow, but it's called the Educators Coaching Academy. So I am their community success manager. So it's small, but we're starting somewhere. But I just know that it's so worth it to be with people that have the same values and that are excited about life and that really want to take care of children. And my voice is gone because I was just with second graders today. So anyways, just thank you guys so much. And I'm looking forward to the next time. So yeah, looking forward to connecting with you guys on LinkedIn.
Yeah, find her on LinkedIn. She is another sparkly human. Have a wonderful Friday, everyone. Thank you for coming. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Hope. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Many Americans.
Hi, Margaret.